So here's a question. What if instead of our current elected politicians, we had just a bunch of everyday people sit down and decide what to do? Would they be better than the current political squabbling? Would they make better decisions? A second question. I often think that if people were just better informed, they would want us to do a lot more to reduce emissions to prevent a climate crisis. But is this actually true? Over the past year and a half, France has been engaging in a radical experiment with democracy aimed at solving the climate problem. It's called the Citizens' Convention on Climate, and it's been generating a lot of news here in France. In what follows, I'll provide some background about why they started this experiment and about how it's been going. In particular, as there's already been a protest and it's being considered in the National Assembly. To give you a preview, the headline is this. When you inform regular people, chosen at random to represent the country as a whole, and give them time to learn about climate change, they favor adopting some real solutions, going much beyond what's currently discussed by politicians. Whether or not you're interested in the outcome for France, you might want to know, is this something that could be adopted elsewhere to improve democracy and to deepen engagement to solve the climate crisis? Welcome to Neglected Future, where I examine not only how for too long we've been neglecting future generations, but also how we can act together to build a better future. First, a bit of background. President Emmanuel Macron, who came to power in 2017, initially planned to make addressing climate change one of the key parts of his agenda. In response to the US pulling out of the Paris Accords, he famously proposed that we, quote, make our planet great again. One of his policies was to continue to increase over time the tax on fossil fuels in order to get us to use less of them. This gave rise to the Yellow Vest or Gilets jaunes protest movement, which ultimately forced the government to abandon its plans. It is in this context that the government proposed the Citizens' Convention for Climate to answer the following question. How to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 40% by 2030 in the spirit of social justice. President Macron repeatedly assured that the measures proposed would be, quote, without a filter, put to vote or adopted through regulations. And so 150 people were chosen from the French population as a whole, excluding only those who are currently serving in government. And indeed, if we look at the stats, they are representative. There are farmers, architects, unemployed and retired people, and so on. They met in 7 three-day sessions starting in 2019 and had access to the best experts on everything from environmental policy to how regulations work. While the approach is unprecedented in France, this kind of citizens' assembly has its roots all the way back in the origins of democracy. We tend to think of democracy in terms of its most visible current form, in electing people who make decisions for us. But democracy, ruled by the people, can take many forms. Ancient Greek city-states had institutions such as the Council of 500 in Athens, whose members were chosen by lot, using a randomization device called a clerotarion. While people chosen at random may not have any particular knowledge of the laws or policy making, one occasionally wonders how much a few of our elected representatives have anyway. And choosing people at random assures that everyone is represented, not just the wealthy, the well-connected, and so on. So there's a long history to citizens' assemblies of one form or another. More recently they have been used, such as in Canada, Ireland, and the Netherlands, to consider reforming political institutions. I'll provide some more info in the comments below. So back to France. In the end, they agreed to 149 changes, and the president agreed to follow up on 146 of them. He dropped the proposal to reduce highway speeds, as well as the proposal to introduce a 4% tax on dividends of large corporations, saying it would harm the ability to attract investment. And then, of course, the rubber hit the road. That is, citizens coming together just to solve the problem were confronted by party politics and special interests. According to members of the convention, the result has been to water down or even undermine their work. They graded harshly the adoption so far of their measures, giving, for example, only 2.5 out of 10 on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. A report by Multinational Observatory highlighted the role of businesses in lobbying to water down their proposals. Keep in mind that according to polls, the French population as a whole supports the measures of the convention by a large margin, with the exception of the reduction in highway speeds that the president already killed. So the stage is set for an epic showdown between, on the one side, the public at large, and on the other side, party politics, corporations, and other interests. If ultimately there is a big gap between the Citizens' Convention and the legislative process, this tells us something. This is the difference between average citizens and party politics, special interests, and parliamentary procedures. That ought to make us think about how citizen assemblies could be used in France and elsewhere in the world as an alternative form of representation that might improve democracy. What about you? Have you been following this process or other citizen assemblies? Jump into the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective on what you think works and doesn't work. Thanks for watching. Until next time.